This is a recording of the Richmond, Virginia meetup back in April 12th, 2025. And my guests are Carlos and Ro. They are a Richmond implant from Northern Virginia, and they've shared their amazing story with the community that we have here about their struggles, their journeys, and what they've been through in their real estate investing careers. Now, they primarily do buy and holds in the very beginning. And if you're looking to get in that, this is an amazing blueprint for you to follow and get ahead of all the hard lessons that you'll have. Carlos and Ro do an amazing job of explaining their process, their breakdown, and keep you engaged with their story. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. I hope I see you guys on the next Richmond meetups.
I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Carlos Salazar. I'm a transplant to Richmond. I partially moved down in 2019, but fully moved down in the midst of COVID in March of 2020. She was still moving or working up north. And primarily the cornerstone of the reason that we moved was because she was in property management for a large international property management company. And she was sitting on meetings that it talked about or had conversations about pouring in hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into Richmond. And we heard that 5-6 years ago. And we were like, well, if we get a fraction of a percent of that, then I think we'll be happy. And so will our kids and grandkids. So I don't know. You guys are obviously in the room, and whether you saw that or you are also transplants, congratulations, because you guys are going to be part of that too if you're not part of it already. So, and this is my wife.
Hello.
Rocio.
How are you? Sorry, you're dying here.
Oh, I'm dying. So.
Okay.
You're good?
Yes. Awesome. Hi, my name is Rocio, but you guys can call me Ro. If you see me limping, I just ran the Monument 10K. I don't know what I was thinking. But yes, so I have over a decade of experience in property management. I worked with Bozzuto and Greystar up in DC, managed multiple properties, purchased, sold, lease ups, you name it. So I've been in real estate for quite some time. And then, like Carlos had mentioned, Greystar was just doing a bunch of research, and they actually started funding money from the company themselves into Scott's Addition. They probably have like 4 or 5 buildings there. I don't know if they still own them. And Richmond was a home that we had. I went to school at VCU. We lived here for a couple years after we were married, and then we moved back home just because it was faster paced. We wanted to accelerate our careers. And then kids brought us back down here, and the investment journey really began full time. So I am currently an agent. We've always started out as investors, but I did get my license in 2021. I property manage all of our rentals and also manage all of our Airbnbs. So I'm more of your dispo person, and Carlos is more of the acquisitions.
I'm the hunter. She preps the meal is the way that I like to look at it. So you'll see that throughout the entire process. Some people do that in partnerships that they hire. Some people do that in employees that they hire. But we just happen to have like an in-house thing where it's husband and wife, and it works out fantastically. So in today's chat, I want it to be as interactive as possible. So if you guys have questions, by all means, direct them to myself or to Rocio. We do have very separate disciplines. We're both professionals in what we used to do before. So if you have questions, I have certain responsibilities that she has no idea about. And then she has certain disciplines that I have no clue about, right? So you'll have to direct them to either one of them. But what we'll be going over are the disciplines or the advantages that we've had in operations in our systems that have helped us scale throughout the process. Stuff that we already knew from corporate jobs before, things that we've learned, and stuff that we're still in the process of learning. So, all right. So at the very, very beginning, as most people in entrepreneurship, whether that's investing or that's in building a career as it could be a contractor, a plumber, or whatever it might be, you start off as just trying to survive, right? You just want to make sure that you can make it to the next phase. You want to make sure that you can make it through the season if you're a seasonal thing. You want to make it through the year. There's always that saying of like, if you can survive the first 3 years, then you're in the top 20% of the businesses that are, that start as LLCs. So I think we weren't alone when all we were trying to do is just make sure that we survived. Now, she did have a job. She made strong income so that she could support me and full-time investing. But I just needed to make sure that it was viable. We needed to make sure that we could make some sort of money in order to, was it to retire her? Maybe not. Was it just for me to do this for a few years and then go back to my corporate job, but now we had a portfolio? Maybe. But it was so kind of up in the air that all we were trying to do is just make sure that the idea, the plan, the goal that we had was something that not only could be done, but we could actually make money from it. And it wasn't just going to be like a losing money venture.
Yeah, so at the very beginning, it was just income, revenue. How are we just going to make money? And then our goal at the very beginning was we just want to buy 1 rental a year. And then when we get to 10, we're going to be nice and happy, and that'll be it. That was as far as we wanted. We have always been buy and hold diehard fans. So.
All right, so what building to scale looked like? Again, some of us has worked corporate jobs. We've had to apply these things. We've had to manage people through them. But really, it was just like, for us in the moment, it was daily fires. We didn't know what we were doing. Cool. Things were going to fall apart. We were going to either think we were going to make money. We didn't make money. Whatever the case was, there were daily fires. It was a 1-person army. So at the time, I think maybe for the first 2 years, it was me doing the finding, the renovating. I was doing painting. I was on roofs. Like, if you know me now, you know I don't get on roofs. Like, my hands are as soft as my daughter's, right? So now, but it wasn't that case. It wasn't at the beginning, right? So I was doing a lot of the work myself. I was finding the deals. I was having relationships with lenders. I was showing them what I could do. I was trying to just be as efficient in picking up materials, dropping off, stuff at the dump, whatever it was all me. Manual fixes. So I was the one that was, again, fixing everything on the fly. It wasn't a, how do I put a system in place in order for it not to break again? It was just a, how do we fix it in the moment so that the problem would pass, right? And then scarcity. It was just whatever would come about, I was just grabbing a deal. It wasn't a how do we make sure that we maximize on the opportunities that we were given. And again, that same saying of like, you're really at a good place when you say no more than you say yes. That's the opposite of what I was at. I was more of the mindset of just saying yes to everything because I was just grateful to have the opportunity. And then how are we going to figure it out later, right? Shoot from the hip. What is it? Aim, fire, shoot, or shoot, fire, aim, whatever it was. But it was aiming last. So I wasn't sure where I was going. But obviously that wasn't working. And Rocio had more of the mindset just from her corporate background of the difference.
Yeah, I was looking for more structure, long-term systems, delegated accountability, automated and repeatable, vision-driven plan. I'm the detailed. My PI is my index, my personality index is a specialist. I go down and I go deep. And when Carlos started the business, he was going wide, and we were doing a lot of different things. So that's just the difference in kind of how all of that worked out.
Now, our story starts about 2019 or so. We did have kids at the time. We had 2 little ones. Our youngest was 3 years old.
3 and 5.
So we had a mortgage. We had car payments. We had 2 kids. We both had jobs. We both had degrees. We had student loans. We had credit card debt. We had a lot of the things that normal people, I'd call it normal people have, and they feel like they're kind of like under the weight of all that kind of stuff. But we knew that wasn't the end, right? We knew that it really should have only been the beginning, but how were we going to do it? We didn't know. We only knew that in order to get there was to just stretch ourselves somehow. And we just needed to make sure that we braced to not break in the process.
Yeah. And Carlos, I will say, did a really good job at the beginning of doing all the hunting, getting all the opportunities, meeting all the lenders, getting all the houses, getting great deals, until it came to the point where I also had to help manage all of that incoming flow, which was, a great opportunity, and we never wanted to let it go, but I still had a full-time job, a corporate full-time job, which was very demanding. So that led us to, I guess, eventually really realizing that, like, okay, some things need to change, right? So here, I think what we chose progress over perfection. We just wanted to get it done. Like Carlos said, we didn't want to say no, and we kept going 100 miles an hour and just got. Didn't really focus on so much of, like, things were organized, but they were organized in our way. Things were never built with the intent to hire or get help and build roles. So a lot of that, I think, is one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners run into, where you're just going, again, your number one thing is just like making that money, growing that business. But then you get to a point where you could only do so much. And then that point goes to, like, okay, I want to make more. And because you aren't systematized or whatnot, that's where things really started getting foggy for us.
The way I felt it was that it felt very much like a to-do list. Every day was a to-do list, right? There was no systems. There was no process. There was no, this is how we do it, so that I didn't have to think about it. It all just lived in my head. And because it lived in my head, I then had to transfer it somewhere. Otherwise I'd forget. So it had to live on a to-do list. So really, it was just like, how do we get to the next day without today burning the whole thing down so that we couldn't do it anymore?
And
right?
We got to that point when I had my job and I just could not. I was like, I can't. I have to pick one. I have to decide to help you so we can continue to grow it, or we stay where we are and it just, we just make what we have good. All the rentals that we have good, and just kind of keep it that way. We mastered hustle again, though. So what that means is just like we overworked ourselves. We woke up, we worked, we went to sleep, working. It was just constantly, like, if you asked us what we did best, it was just grinding, doing, working all the time. People call it work, but at the end of the day, we do enjoy a lot of what we do, but your body will tell you at some point, like, okay, this is your limit.
I was determined at that point. It's not by accident that my head hits the wall on the picture first. She was in the background. She was being supportive, but I was just like, nope. I'm just going to out-hustle Philip. I mean, you can't out-hustle Philip, but, like, that was the idea, right? The idea was, it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to out-hustle, I'm going to outwork, I'm going to outperform. And if that meant that I would save $150 because I would paint the back stoop instead of paying somebody to do it, then I was going to do it. If that was at 10 o'clock at night, I'd just do it at 10 o'clock at night. But I was going to do it. I was determined in order to, like, outwork, outperform, and be able to actually make the money. Even though it was faux made, I was going to make the money on the back end so that it looked profitable for us to continue to do it.
So that's Carlos. No one can do it like me. Nobody could literally do it better, as fast, all the things. Like, nobody could, and there was no way that I could change that in his head. So we went through that for some time until this is me. But literally, I was like, you know what? I'm out. I had waves of, like, I'm out. I'm not going to do this anymore. We have a family. Like, we can't continue to do this. It really got to that point where it tested everything for us. It tested us financially. It tested us, our personal lives, our kids, everything. So when I got to that point, and I was like, okay, I'm going to walk out. Like, this is great, but, like, this is not how our visions were very different. And we didn't realize that until we kept hitting the same issue over and over again. What we did do, without knowing that we really did it, was that we tracked what others guessed. So because Carlos was an accountant, and because I came from the corporate world and had always I always had structure and systems, we tracked our income, and we had many data points. They were all over the place, But when we started flipping, because first it was just the rentals, we have a rental spreadsheet. We had a set way of how we analyzed our deals, how we did our numbers, how we determined whether we were going to flip it. And then we actually started doing renovations, and we did the thing that we said we were never going to do. We were never going to flip. Why? But the opportunity was great. So that's exactly why we did that. And with that, then we started building our data points for the flips, construction, the labor, the supplies, and everything was in an Excel, just kind of like something to guide us, get us through to the next project. And then eventually we did build our rentals and we started Airbnbs. And so we had to start tracking those expenses. So everything was at some point tracked, which was, I think, a huge advantage at that time.
It was huge. So
Yeah.
people consider P&Ls for entire houses or entire companies, right? Cool, fantastic. You have a balance sheet, you have a P&L, cool. How often are you following up with that? How often are you talking to your accountant? Well, I was considering a P&L for every single project, whether it was a rental or it was a flip. Didn't matter. I had a profit and I had a loss. For me, the profit was just basically the bottom line, right? There was no real profit on the front end, but there was money that was coming in, and then there was the back end of what I was going to sell it for or what I was going to refinance it for. So we all know people in this, not in this room, but we all know people in this room know people that say that they made $50,000 on a flip, right? $100,000 on a flip. I made $100,000 on a flip. Okay. That may be true, but it may also be that you're just getting $40,000 back that you've invested and you're making $60,000 on the flip. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't running my numbers wrong, again, only for survival purposes. I wasn't thinking yet around the bend about the scale. It was only I just want to make sure that she can leave her job, or I just need to stop doing what I'm doing because this is more of a hobby and I need to go back to work. Is it a go back to work thing, or is this a real business that's actually making money? So that's really why we were measuring the data points. So the advantage of that over some time, even though we weren't really applying it to that in that way, is that I could go back and I could see how much a 1,200 square foot house cost plumbing wise, right? What was the actual dollar per square foot? What was the actual dollar per square foot for electrical? What was the actual, not a theoretical, this is what I read on whatever, or this is a conversation that I had. It was actually practical stuff. So that ended up allowing us to be able to go beyond the guessing part and the hoping part, or let me talk to a contractor part. It allowed us to skip that with everything. It allowed us to skip that and then go straight to the source, which was the data that we were already gathering.
And then just as a side note, at this point, we had continued to do our rentals. We were adding on one Airbnb or two. And then we also, Carlos hired a construction crew, small construction crew. First it started with one individual and then we got to two. Because again, we were finding rentals and we were doing renovations at the same time. And when we have these hires, it was just, it was all kind of like, here you go ahead, do this thing, and we'll keep you, just continue to give you the work because we were busy. What that made a full circle was when we weren't so busy, our flipping direction changed, and we had to really then figure out what those roles were and what those guys were actually there to do and not to do. So at this point, our team was growing, but I don't think with the idea of it, like we're going to continue to grow it even further, right?
And mind you, all this was very time consuming. Very time consuming. Like,
yeah,
I won't say that half the day I was in the, but I was staying up till 11 o'clock at night, just like plugging everything in. I mean, to the point where I was like plugging in receipt by receipt. Sure, could you scan it and put it in QuickBooks and make it really? Yeah, you could, and I could have done that. I had the background in that, but I knew that I wasn't going to be as involved and understand my business as much as if I took the receipt and I plugged it in and I was like, no, we overpaid for materials here, right? So like I needed to be as fully integrated as possible to it.
Yeah, at this point, we knew that we had a lot going on. We had some hires and we got into more of educate me on how to scale. This is really where it started, and it was with Traction. I don't know if you guys have heard of that book. If you haven't, it's a game changer. It's amazing. Traction taught us what a visionary and what an integrator is.
Can you
Who
guys
do
guess?
you think is the visionary?
Can you guys guess who the visionary is? Not me. Yes, I'm obviously the most excited. I'm not saying you're not excited, but I'm very excited. I'm
That's
always
okay.
very excited. Yes, I'm the visionary and integrator. So again, I'll go out and I'll fetch the dream, and then I'll bring it in, and then she makes sure that it's profitable, basically.
I hope you guys are enjoying Carlos and Rose's amazing story in real estate investing. I want to let you guys know that we have a free online school community called the New Breed Investor Community. The link's in the description below, so make sure you guys check that out. And I'm looking to help you guys get your first deal, 10th deal, whatever resource you guys need. Let's get back to the presentation.
Yeah, and then we also had an EOS system, right? So this really taught us, we set quarterly goals, we set our weekly to-dos, we set our issues, we did the whole thing. Traction, every single week we did. The best part of this and really diving into our business this way was the mentorship, because there was an accountability factor and somebody that was telling us like, okay, this is great, you guys are doing so good and you could do more. But if you think about it this way, if you align these processes and if you put the right people in the right places, that's how we would be able to continue to tackle all of the opportunities that were still coming our way. So the mentorship and then the KPIs was a game changer. This was the data points that we were doing in the beginning, but tracking them in as KPIs was literally a night and day, just immediate like aha moment of your business. And it takes you probably a quarter for you to see if you're really tracking it, depending on how often, but if you're tracking things on a weekly basis, by 3 months and by 6, you can start seeing your patterns, your trends, where your time is being allotted. Like, it was a game changer for us.
I'll just go over them myself because there was a different perspective for me, right, than for Rocio. For her, it was just like, yeah, this makes sense. Of course, there's a visionary and implementer. For me, I was just like, I'm getting 1% of that $1 billion that's supposed to be coming down here. What does that mean? I don't know, but we're going to go grab it, right? So traction is very important. Read the book. It really splits up the responsibilities. And I do want to make sure that it's super clear to everybody that you can partner up with somebody to do that. Take that risk at your own risk, I guess is the best way to put it. But you can also hire it out. We just happen to be a team that's dynamic and we have the 2 sets. But I would not say, once you read that book, you'll understand that you don't necessarily have to have somebody that you're partnered with in order to be the perfect dynamic.
Yeah.
If that works out and you're both aligned, fantastic. But don't give up. That's a very expensive 50%. It's a very expensive 50% for you to give that up for somebody who's just like, I think, a little bit better with paperwork than you are.
The most important part is identifying it, right? Because the biggest thing about really putting in the data and really identifying where you sit and where you naturally align, whether it's a visionary or an integrator, then that's where you see your areas of opportunities, and that's where you see where you might need to be more flexible, where you might be putting more of your time. If you're not so much of an integrator, do you need to hire somebody that's going to help you stay on track and be more integrated, as opposed to just, being a visionary and having like 10 dreams in one day? No offense, 10 dreams is a lot.
I mean, if 8 of them work.
Yeah. So this is just an example of how we tracked back then some of our short-term rentals. So again, it is every single week, we have your goals, you have what you want to do per quarter, and you have your occupancy. And all of our Airbnbs, we always took our numbers versus the market. So you have comparables with Airbnbs as well, because we always want to make sure, okay, this is the Airbnb that I need to be better than, or I want to be at level with. And if they're suffering and I'm suffering, that's normal, right? Like just like a home on the market. But if not, then you might be doing something that's wrong. And this is actually what helped us really figure out the Airbnb algorithm and the platform. We change our pictures 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. We stay refreshed. We leave reviews. We respond to the reviews that are being left. So all of those little things, we still continue to have, over 300, 400 reviews at 5 stars or close to.
Now, what's really important here is that it completely eliminates the feeling part. We all come to networking events. We're all talking to other people. We have plenty of friends that used to do Airbnbs, no longer do Airbnbs. It didn't work out for them. Why? No, I don't know. But when we look at our RevPAR and we look at our nightly rates and our RevPAR have been above standard, above market for our area consistently. So regardless what Joe said, no offense to Joe. I think there's a Joe back here, but no offense to you, Joe. But like if Joe had an opinion about it and his 3 Airbnbs didn't work out in a certain neighborhood, well, what is Joe doing, right? Not compared to the rest of the market, because compared to the rest of the market, we're outperforming based on our nightly rates and we're outperforming in terms of our bookings. So it completely eliminated the feeling part and it was just solely based off performance. If all of it started to tank and our prices had to go down and so was the market, then again, that's data. We could then decide Airbnbs are no longer working in the market and we need to start to pull out of that and change it to something else like midterms or corporate or whatever it was. But because it stayed pretty strong, in fact, it increased, it got better because people were starting to fall out and we saw that. People were like, oh, it's not working. I'm like, yeah, that sucks. Yeah, I realize it's not working. And then for us, it was just like, do we add another one, right? And it was all based off of data.
Data, right.
All based off of
right.
data.
And then this was also this is where after the 6 months, after a year specifically for Airbnbs, seasonalities, you could pinpoint exactly, okay, starting in September and October, that's when you're going to start seeing your rates decrease. That's when you're going to start seeing less bookings. So what do we have to do to be able to keep our occupancy high and at least be a certain percentage down from when we're at the top of the market during the seasonality? And then we can compare it now year over year. So every year we see, is there a delay? Why is there a delay? Is it because of the elections? We always know what to expect. So then when we are in February, which is the lowest month of the year, guess what we're doing in February? We're not sprucing up the house. We're not spending as much money. Our expenses are tight because the money is the lowest at that point. So we know specifically what months and what houses are a hit and what you need to do every single year.
So then in a way, we're adjusting our expenses knowing that February is tighter, opposed to just feeling like, oh, we're going to take a hit.
Right.
Right? We could dial it back because we knew it was going to
So where we are not feeling as big of a hit, right? We know it's going to be less, but it's not going to be as big.
Do you guys manually enter that data every single week?
Every week. So we actually do it for Airbnbs. I do it monthly for my long-term rentals. For agency, it's weekly because you have leads, you have follow-ups, you have listing appointments, you have all the things. For project management, it's pretty much on a weekly basis as well. And then for a marketing company, it's on a weekly basis as well. I think the only one is probably property management. For the long-term renters, that's just a monthly delinquency is really what's important there.
Yeah. Now, I do have inputs for project management and for marketing. There's daily inputs.
Do you guys run a meeting every week on those different departments, like fixing and flipping? You have like a L10 meeting for like an hour, and then you have an L10 meeting for Airbnb, L10 for your rentals?
Yeah, it's like a pipe. So we have a pipe meeting basically for whatever's in the pipe, whatever's in the works.
And then the priority of what we feel like we do need to meet 3 times or 2 times a day is probably the 2 companies right now, which is marketing and agency. That's where we've pivoted and that's where we've shifted. And so our property management meeting is once a week. We try our goal, and with the datas, we know that we need to keep our tenants there for 2 years minimum. Ideally, obviously more than that, but we've found with our data that on average we keep our tenants 4 to 5 years. So then we realized we don't need to lay so hard in on the data, and that we are good as long as we're staying on top of our renewals and on top of the houses.
Yeah,
so
like our marketing meetings, because we've shifted, is daily, and it's just so that we can have conversations about any shifts, anything we're realizing, any small pivots. We don't want to make any big ones, but like any small pivots we need to make, what's working, what's not working.
So metrics told us where we were lying to ourselves. So the great part is that we're not having any of the pictures, but this is the one. But metrics
it's
really
a globe in a hand.
Gave us metrics really gave us the eye opening of like where we thought, again, the feelings of where we thought the business was, how much money you were making versus the actual numbers and time and where energy was being spent. So it was a great time of clarity, I think, is what at this point me and Carlos were like, we figured it out. We got it all figured out. It's great.
Before that, we were not great.
No.
No, I mean it felt like we were sinking. It really did. And it was like, were we making money? All right, so it got to a real point. The real point is we were inputting the data, but we weren't even sure that we were inputting it right. We knew that we had a bunch of stuff going on. Like whenever anybody goes to a meeting, to a meetup, they're like, how many flips you got going on? And I was like, yeah, we got like 7. And did we know what we were making?
No.
I mean, if I went back to my KPI, like to my log, I could probably figure that out. But it wasn't something that, it's a very different conversation. I would understand. I would see that the lenders would appreciate this. If a lender asked me, they were like, how's your flip doing? And you're like, it's about 7 days out. My staging is already scheduled. We're projected based on the market. We're projected to list at 345, and that's roughly under market. So we're hoping that that conversation I couldn't quite have because we had so many pieces going on and so many things going on. Although we were recording it all, we didn't, right? So we didn't know really like what direction we were going in. Were things falling apart? Were things good? Were they not? It felt like they were coming together.
So it gave us
we had
a
better
clear picture, but that didn't necessarily mean that they were great data points, that we were in a great place. What that meant was, oh, okay, we're spending way too much energy in the project management. Where's his time better served? At this point, we realized that we needed to start really figuring out what we were worth individually. Because if all of his energy is spent running the crew, going to Lowe's, getting them things and doing all of this, but his specialty is acquisitions. His specialty is finding the deals. His specialty is the marketing. That's the high price point of what you get when you think of Carlos, but we weren't using that. So that's really what all of the metrics opened up and showed us. And what it showed us was also a humble brag, was that property management was systematized. Mind you, I did this for over 10 years. So I did my SOPs. I know how to screen a tenant with my eyes closed. I made sure I was like, I don't have evictions because an eviction in DC is very different than an eviction in Richmond. Up there, it's a game. People literally have a profession to try to play with fair housing and to just live 6 months at a time in different places. So all of that experience for me was very easy to plug in. The Airbnb was a learning curve, but the minute I also have a hospitality background, I worked in hotels for 3 years. So all of that for me was just like, this is how we're going to do it. But my data necessarily wasn't correctly perfect, but I knew that we needed to track and keep going. And then when I got my real estate license and I started representing all of the flips that we were doing, that's really when I was stretched thin again. And I was like, okay, we have 3 businesses here. I am one person. So what is it that we really want to do and focus on? The pictures are going white every time. Maybe we're going to take it off. You guys can probably see our... Yeah, let me try that. But this is the next one if you want to keep going. Oh, okay. Do you want to help us out?
Oh, it's right here.
Oh, it's right there. Okay. You can keep going.
A brief bathroom intermission. No, I'm joking. All right. No, but I think it's best if we just kind of have it out. Do you guys have any questions? Sue?
Okay. You've got an accounting and finance background. Rosie's got project management and systems background. So you're a great team. You also have kids. You also have family obligations. How do you establish those balance? Or do you have it?
We don't think of it in like the conventional sense of just like we need to have a clear, definitive. We work till 5 o'clock. She tried that on me, and then when she left her job, she was like, "Yeah, you're right. This doesn't quite work that way." So we don't have like kind of like clear definition as to when we clock in, when we clock out. We have one of us drops off the girls. They're signed up in plenty: piano, golf, tennis,
It's so hard
camps.
to say. I don't have
I mean,
my
they're signed
glasses.
up in
You
plenty of
don't drink.
activities,
Okay.
and when we're there, we're present. So for us, it was more of like the definition of when we're present, we're present, regardless of how busy our life might be. And that might not be the best answer, but it's what works for us. Our girls are very involved. They know that we own houses. They don't know how many. They know that we do real estate. I fix up houses.
They became lenders this year.
They became lenders this
money
year.
for a few kids that wanted to start their own business. So they're in it. I think we involve them. We try to have them be part of it to a certain degree. We don't want them to hate it. We don't expect them to do this when they're older. But yes, it is definitely a challenge, I think, to try to balance everything out. But the fact that me and Carlos just are on the same wavelength of like, we want more, and we wouldn't be happy if we weren't challenging ourselves. So I think that there's a balance between that fulfilling, that need of like doing more, getting more, because it's sure we all want to win, we all want money, but it's more of a.
She just pointed at me.
It's
like, we all
more
want
of
money.
a fulfillment part, right? Like and this is what we'll get to later on, where like our company's now evolved to where we have a mission statement, we have core values, we know the things that are important to us, and what our North Star is very specific, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to impact and give back in education and younger children. So
the short of that is our KPIs, our key performance indicators, turned into key purpose indicators. So now we measure that opposed to only measurable metrics that are usually associated with money or volume. It's the purpose of what we're trying to do things for. And then we had a second question. Okay.
Well, this is the wall that I was talking about that I hit. I was Airbnb, property management, also trying to assist with some of the flipping, which it didn't work out. One of the biggest important things is when we determined that we were an integrator and a visionary, was that he stayed in his lane and I stayed in mine, meaning he was acquisitions and I was dispo. And sure, our company came together when it came to high-level decisions, but at the end of the day, we both did our own thing, and we thought that that was the healthiest thing at that time.
I was the manager of my side. Anything I delegated to her or any opinions that she had was just an opinion, and I could take it in as advice or counsel. And then same thing, she had things that all I could do was kick and scream about, and then she would just do whatever she saw fit for that side of the business.
Yep. And so then Carlos wanted to lean out the process. He wanted to streamline the process instead of spending more money. The pull and the tug here has always just been spending more money, spending more money, spending more money.
So for me, it was
that's a mentality that has slowly shifted for us as well.
For me,
it
was all efficiency. It was all Six Sigma. It was all like, how do we cut the waste? How do we lean this process out even more? How do we have more people do more things more efficiently? And how do we cut cost, right? Like, one way to do it is employees, instead of getting a regular employee that's stateside, you just get a virtual assistant, right? Like, how do I do that, but in my business, right? How do I get discounts with contractors because they do it at scale and they do a specialty, and I can guarantee them a certain amount of deals that they'll work on, and if they don't, then they have I pay them essentially like a bonus. Hey, I didn't get you 5 deals this month. Here's an extra couple grand, something like that. Where it's just like, how do I just like cut a good deal essentially, so that I didn't have to like go out and spend more money.
Of course, I was on the other side where I was like, no, I really want to get focal and I really want to go deeper, but that's going to require us to get more hands on board. And so it was hard, being able to say that without the dollars just flying everywhere for Carlos. And funny enough, I came to this realization because we had gotten to the point where I saw what we could do and how we were doing it just wasn't going to get us to the next thing. But I had seen it wasn't so much of I am tired and I've hit my limit or my cap mentally, as much as it was that I could see that it was holding us back.
To the point, it was so bad that she was willing to leave me everything. Not, we weren't getting a divorce, but like, let
Yes.
me run.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of had a conversation about it,
There's
but
a lot of therapy.
no, but I was so obsessed with like still getting to the next level, but still trying to do it so lean that it just wasn't going to math. Didn't matter how we cut it. It just wasn't going to math. And she knew, she had the vision of like, and background of just like, it takes a system in order for that to happen. You're just going to end up dying early. Like, you're just going to have a heart attack, right? Like, you're just going to end up not having it work out. And it's going to feel like you put out a bunch of effort, didn't work out, and now we have nothing. And then, you know, so that's what she didn't want. So we ended up having a lot of back and forth where she was just like, fine, if that's how you want to run it.
I think I left the business like 10 times, y'all. 10 times.
She was like, if that's how you want to run it,
done.
it's just not going to work somehow.
Yeah.
Right. And at that point, I was like, I don't even want to hire people. Like, how am I going to do it? Virtual assistants? I don't know. Maybe I just keep what I have.
We did
and
also
that's it.
have virtual assistants. I had virtual assistants from the Philippines helping me do the property management, and that was also great. I now also have another virtual assistant also doing property management and hiring other ones for agency. That's where our business is pivoted to. But my biggest thing and what I did was that I literally wrote down every single thing that I did, and I took out all the $10 to $15 an hour tasks that I was doing. And so separating that gave me, like, on paper really clearly where most of my responsibilities were and where most of my time and energy was going to. And so if I didn't really itemize those two into those two lists, I wouldn't have been able to really see like where we physically can't do any more ourselves. So that's definitely a suggestion. So at this point, we hired our first full-time salary property manager, and Carlos almost had a heart attack.
In fairness, I went to Mexico and I ran into her. Where is she?
Jasmine.
And I ran into Jasmine in Mexico on a real estate investing trip. She was there. She was an agent. She came down. We met. And we were just kind of being open about what we needed, what we wanted out of just our industry. And I brought it up. She ended up raising her hand. We had a conversation about it. She met with Rocio, and we felt like it was a perfect fit. And I think it's been about a year now. And that was really the game changer for us in terms of just like, or at least for me, in terms of like my perspective on how I needed to see things, opposed to just hiring VAs and just kind of being leaned out. When she came in, of course, I grunted, I kicked. I was like, that's a salary, and can we do this and whatever. But then when she came on board, I could see the difference that it was causing, not just in our business, but it was causing on the person who was going to be the key or cornerstone of like the growth of the business. Right? And how much weight was going to be lifted off her shoulders. And I was just like, you know what? It's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it to make sure that she had the support that she needed to do that.
Yeah. And of course, what that led us to was like, guess what? It's still broken. Why? Because she came in and the roles that needed to be defined, it's one thing to say this is a property manager and you're going to manage all the properties. But it's a whole different thing to say you're the property managers, rent collection, delinquency, tenant notifications, Airbnb communications, walking after the cleaner. All of this are your responsibilities. And that right here is where we ran into, again, so we had the metrics. When we got the metrics, we realized like all the things that were missing or all the areas of opportunities and that we were just wasting so much energy. And then this just led us to actual processes and systems. So standard of operating procedure is an SOP. How many of you guys are familiar with an SOP, right? Yes, that was like the thing that you would go to when you didn't know what to do for us, right? So I had all of those things set up, and I had for everything, for leasing, for absolutely everything, which sounds great, but that is very different than a process. A procedure is how you're gonna do the task. A process is how you get from point A to point B. So when she came on, It was just a like, here are all the procedures and things you have to do, but there was no process for it. So that led us into another deeper layer of hiring and of growing our team, and eventually doing that just for my position, his position, Jasmine, and at that point we have also a marketing people that are now part of the marketing company as well. Now it was like super clear and identifying what every single person's role and responsibility was. So that was probably the biggest thing that came out of our first really full-time hire. So we turned mistakes into SOPs, like I just mentioned, which was great. And one of the things that I had always done that I will say is a really big tip, no matter where you are in your business, no matter what you do, whatever it is, the next thing that you sit down in front of a desk in a computer and you're doing something, open up a Word doc and just start typing in bullet points, or 1, 2, 3. What do you do? What are you actually physically doing? I'm picking up the phone, calling this person. I'm doing this thing. That is literally the beginning of an SOP. You don't have to have a template. You don't have to have this fancy step-by-step guide. You don't have to have a logo on it. You have to have a blank document with what you do exactly. And this takes time and it's gruesome, but in the beginning, it's probably the best thing that you could probably do, as opposed to you having 4 or 5 different businesses and having to go back and do it for everything.
Remember the slide process over perfection? That's really what that was. It's just, we just needed to get it on paper. And I'm not the best at that. I still am not the best at that. Now, do I see the value in it? Absolutely. So now it's things like, sure, you can create the bullet point. Can I just spit it all out into chat? Can we do Minute AI where you just speak it to it and then it organizes everything for you? Can you do Loom videos?
That's what I was going to say. That Loom is probably now even better than typing it out and documenting it. The reason why I like a Word document is because you can go back and edit it really quickly, as opposed to a Loom. It's when you have that set procedure ready to go and in place, and you're recording it, right? If you're on an Apple computer, it's Command Shift number 5, and it screen records. You just sit there in front of the computer, you talk to it, and you tell it what to do, and you put it in a little folder, and then you hire your first VA, and you're like, here you go.
Organize it.
This is how you do it. I'm telling you, it's a game changer. So if you're ever in question of like, I want to grow, I'm going to hire, I'm going to do this, start off by just writing down or documenting everything that you do in a Word document and doing screen recordings. And Loom is free too. So.
Yeah, and a little nugget to that, just to kind of make it a little bit deeper, is once you start having that, whether it's through images or documents or videos or what have you, you can create your own chat. I'm sure you guys have already kind of done that or heard about it or something, but you can create your own chat. You can start plugging stuff into the chat, so that when you do have a virtual assistant or you do get some help, they can just plug in the question and then it'll spit out the answer that's part of that SOP, part of that process, part of that procedure, part of how you would do things based on the 4 documents that are kind of similar that have all been plugged into the chat.
Okay, so who, not how, changed everything. At this point, we were identifying the roles, and it was really important to determine who is doing what. It's not just necessarily that we just need all these functions, but who is that person? Then we went down into another layer of what does that really mean? And it all came back circle to us. Core values, mission statement. I've always genuinely thought that was so cheesy. I was like, oh, this company has their core values and their mission statements. But when you have a team of people that you have to lead and you have to set by example, what are those examples? And they should be clearly defined. And then you will literally help you attract the people that you want to build your business with. Because it's a mutual relationship. It's you and them, and it goes back and forth, and we can't do it without each other. It's the same thing for scaling and for growing a team. You can't do it without them. We wouldn't be able to, have all of these businesses and flourish and pivot and be super, just clear and open about everything if you didn't outline exactly who. And if you're in person, it might be a little bit easier, but if you have a partner, it is super important to know if you guys are going in the right direction and what that conversation looks like. That way, every single person that works with you and is part of your team knows that very clearly. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have to 100% agree on it, but they're clear and they accept that that is what the company unveils.
For the visionaries that are out there, that makes sense for an integrator, right? For a visionary, the idea I'm going to get in 10 minutes is better than the idea that I had yesterday, right? So I'm going to try to shift. I'm going to try to pivot. I'm probably not even going to remember what I said last week because the idea is not that good. This idea is weak. This idea for this week is better. So like that became really, I too thought it was cheesy, but that became almost something that was going to hold me accountable. That she made sure that she put into place. I was like, no, Carlos, we had a conversation. We've met about it. We had long discussion. These are the reasons why these are the most important points, the mission, the values, the missions, like all of that was super important. And it kept me guided. It kept me on brand. It kept me focused because as a visionary, I'll go in multiple different directions, but that kept me back in my lane, right?
So that's just what we were saying. We stopped hiring clones. We started building a team. If it's not documented, it doesn't exist. So everything should be recorded, documented, stored, roles defined. That's really the idea of scaling, is to make it very clear and concise as to what person is doing what in the company. At this point, we've gotten a good flow. So just to give you an idea, like our property management team is just built of a property manager and the assistant VA. There's a lot of administrative tasks and responsibilities that does. So that's one team, and I manage that. And then they also manage the Airbnb. Then we also have a couple cleaners in-house, one that we hire hourly because we have enough work with our rentals, with our Airbnbs, that we are able to hire a full-time cleaner, which is a really nice lever to pull and save expenses, save for costs with Airbnbs. So we have a team of 2 set for the Airbnbs. And then for agency, right now, I am a team lead, and hopefully by June, I'll have around 8 agents to help me because our marketing company has shifted. And then we have a whole team set up with our marketing company where there's a lead manager, an acquisitions, dispo, and then you manage pretty much that entire team. So there's many teams that we've had with different businesses. Our main ones right now are agency and marketing, and our worlds are colliding. We are not so much in our lanes as we were in the very beginning. And I think that the way that's been able to be very organic and fitting is with the teams that we've built within each of those companies. So, that's kind of outlining, I guess, how I feel right now. The other biggest thing that we want to talk about is speed being a competitive advantage, and this is more of your...
Yeah, so again, if it's not based on feelings, it's solely based on data, you can make those competitive leaps. You can make those decisions pretty quickly, especially if you're very tied to the information that you have. You can quickly move from one thing to the next. Certain areas perform better. If it's a rental, if it's a flip, I can make a decision if I'm going to overpay, if I'm going to underpay. Like all of that's going to be dependent on data, and so that it's not a feeling thing. So I'm not researching the neighborhood at that point. As long as I have that data, I can move quickly from one thing to the next. Now, and that's for everything. That's from contractors, subcontractors, marketing stuff, anything. Speed is a competitive advantage. We all know that person that you may not want to tell that thing that you do to because they're going to go out and execute on it. Well, that's the speed of execution. That makes the person, or that's how we saw it, is it makes the person the most dangerous if they have speed to execution. There are also things that we need to highlight, like hidden costs and delays. That's another reason that speed is an advantage. If you guys are familiar with per diems, that's something that I made sure that I was aware of day one, in terms of how long projects took or any money that I was holding for any particular reason. A per diem, if you're not familiar with it, is the cost per day for a particular event, money that you're holding, loan, whatever it might be. So whenever you're ordering a payoff for a mortgage, for example, it'll say per diem, right? It'll be the payoff is $125,000, per diem is $45 a day. Well, every house, every project, every Airbnb, every rental that we didn't turn, every day that the house was vacant because we bought it but we didn't start the project, whatever it might be, there was a per diem. And there's a form, there's an Excel, that I have that per diem for every single thing that we have going on. So I know that it's costing us $749.15 per day if we don't get started on that project, right? So all of that needs to be controlled, managed, and understood. Again, at the beginning, it was just we're throwing the information on that Excel, and I really wasn't paying attention to it. But it got to the point where now we have enough time and we have enough of an opportunity to kind of step back and look at our business in a different way. So that's super important. So look at your business in that way. Every delay has a hidden cost. And that's why you have the balloon and air coming out. All right, so scaling required for us to look at things differently. So like I was alluding to, there was information that we were plugging in. There was an understanding that that's something that we needed to record. So there was levels to it where we knew we needed to record it. We didn't understand it. And then we started understanding it. But then there was information within the information that we needed to understand. But it got to the point where it's really all just numbers, right? Again, the feelings have been removed and it's just data at that point. So we're no longer looking at houses. We're looking at information about the house, neighborhood, days on market for the neighborhood. Who are we going to be buying it from, flipping it? Who's going to be lending the money? Like all of that ended up being part of the decision-making process instead of just being like, I think I got a good house that's off market and I think I can make some money off of it. So everything changed.
And then mastery looks boring. That's the point. What we do and what we see in the scaling part and the hiring and really getting down to the nitty gritty is not the fun part. It's not the flashy part. It's not the social. It's not the marketing. It's not the social media. It's literally behind the scenes data inputting, identifying, and it's repeatable and it's systematic. If you can repeat it, you can create it into a system. If you can create it into the system, you could do more of it, and then it just flows on its own, and you're on to your next big thing or building the revenue in your company and the most value at a really high value at that point. So it's boring. It really isn't. Like operations, unfortunately, I can't say that it's like this amazing thing. And for visionaries, that's where it's hard to transition and get your brain or take that hat off and put it on as to like what systems and operations really is.
It's the Warren Buffett, right? It's the waking up, going to the same McDonald's, driving your same old Cadillac, and living in the same neighborhood. But he made a few good decisions lately, right? Like that's kind of the point. Is that's what we needed to get to, and that's what was hard for me to understand.
And we're still learning. So right now we have a growing team, like I mentioned, for the pretty much main 4 companies. We're always buying and holding, so that team is there. That property manager position isn't going to go anywhere. And I would say that, sometimes it could be you want to assess, like I get that question a lot, like when do I hire a property manager? 50 to 70 houses and above is really what I would say. Units, doors, 50 to 70 different tenants is probably at the time where you want to. But it all depends on your journey. It all depends on where a good amount of your time is it going. Are you also flipping at the same time? So then that's where you're going to have to just accommodate and be flexible. When do you hire? It's always going to feel like it's never a good time. There's a slide I thought. But it's always going to feel like you're not making enough money and it's never a good time. There's never been a time, I think, that we're actually like, yes, we're ready to hire a VA with all this money ready for it. Yes, we're ready to hire a construction crew. Like we have all the business in the world for it. Like you're never really super certain of hiring or growing your team. So you just have to bet on yourself and continue to learn the art and the mastery of scaling. Just continue to do.
One thing that I was just very hesitant on is I needed to make sure that we had the salary for the person that we were going to hire in full, ready to go, fully set aside for the entire year. And that's not the case, right? For me, it was a big pill to swallow where it was just like, you know what? We have enough to cover her and we'll set it aside for 6 months. And I know that with the support and being very diligent, so that kind of forced me too, and Rocio, diligent to make sure that she has everything that she needs to outperform our expectations of her role, so that now she can focus on what she needs to focus on, and I can too. And that's going to lead to, for sure, another 6 months of income for that person. And then you just keep doing that and so that's what we ended up doing with all the people that we've hired is you bet on yourself. You bet on yourself, you have money set aside, and you know you have a system to some degree, you have an understanding of the system that you can then start to plug those people in. But you can't do that without committing to wanting to make sure that you're going to set up a process for that person. You're going to give them clear roles and definitions of what they need to do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so that's our QR code. We're still in the process. We're still planning to grow. We definitely have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 goal plan with our KPIs lined up to fit. Those will pivot and change, but we visit them quarterly. So highly encourage you, even if you're not planning to have a huge team or grow, setting up your KPIs and your quarterlies. If you walk away with one thing in order to operate your businesses better, it's definitely that. And that's in any business. It's not necessarily just property management or just marketing. So we provided a resource page where we've listed all of the things that we use in our businesses, and we've broken it down to the different kind of companies. So that way they're just tools and things that you could use that could help you, whether you're a wholesaler, an agent, you have buy and holds. That document will give you just all the tools that we use online. And then if you guys want to chat with us, feel free to sign up. We'd love talking to people. We love learning new things. We love knowing what everybody's getting into. I think that it's very important that we stay connected. The market is changing so fast, so quickly, and you got to hear it from everybody else's, right? The flippers, how long are their houses staying on the market? How are people having buyer's remorse? Things like that are very important to stay on top of. So we always love chatting with anybody.
Yeah, you can't live in your own bubble. You definitely have to figure out what's going on the outside. So on here, we have Calendly links for each one of us, so you can book just a quick 30-minute chat with us, and then, like she was saying, the resource log. But my roles and responsibilities, just in case you want to call and have a chat with me, is essentially the marketing for the acquisition. So we market and acquisitions for our own stuff. So commercial and residential for our own investments, flips or rentals for us to keep. And then we're also now doing marketing for agency. So for all of her agents. So I also take care of all the financing. So any lending that I need to get in touch with a lender about, refinances, moving money around. Sometimes you need to do that. Figuring out what our return on equity is, our return on investments, all that kind of stuff. All the finance stuff, that's me. So if you have any finance questions, feel free to ask me. But then if you want to speak to Rocio, she's more on the cooking side. I'm in the catching, she's the cooking. The property management, the agency side, teams in agency, the property short-term rentals, and really just overall
and
finances.
People management,
human capital, and also bookkeeping stuff. So although I'm on the front side for the big money, she's on the making sure that we can make payroll and, and make sure all that's taken care of. So that's that. If you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.